The next 6 hours passed in a blur of technical preparation and growing tension. Dr. Kim and her team worked frantically to relocate quantum field generator components to a secondary position deeper in the asteroid. The work was delicate and dangerous. Each component had to be carefully isolated from the main system to prevent premature activation, while still maintaining its quantum coherence. Meanwhile, Chen worked with the station's communications array, trying to establish contact with the approaching colonial fleet. The quantum entanglement communicators were incredibly sophisticated, but the distances involved pushed them to their absolute limits. Amelia divided her time between monitoring both efforts and studying the tactical situation throughout the Sol system. The news from Earth was not encouraging. The resistance broadcasts had grown increasingly sporadic and desperate. New Geneva had fallen completely. The Luna defense grid was offline. Mars Base Alpha had gone silent 3 hours earlier. "Captain," Chen called out, his voice tight with excitement. "I've got something. It's faint, but I think I've established partial contact with the colonial fleet." Amelia rushed to the communications station. The quantum entanglement display showed a weak but stable connection, threads of coherent information stretching across more than 4 light-years of space. "Can you establish voice communication?" "I think so. The signal is going to be heavily distorted and there will be significant delay, but—" Chen made several adjustments to his equipment. "Colonial Fleet, this is Ceres Station. Do you copy?" For several long minutes, there was nothing but static. Then, faintly, a voice emerged from the quantum foam. "Ceres Station, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez aboard the CNS New Dawn. We copy your transmission. Admiral, this is Captain Amelia Voss. What is your fleet's status and intentions?" Another long pause, then. "Captain Voss, we are a combined colonial fleet of 47 vessels, carrying approximately 2 million personnel and advanced combat systems developed over the past century. We received long-range distress signals from the Sol system and have been en route for the past 3 years. 3 years? Amelia was stunned. You've been traveling for 3 years? Affirmative. Our long-range sensors detected the escalation of the hegemony conflict in 2184. We immediately began organizing a relief force, but the distances involved. Captain, we're traveling as fast as our quantum drives allow, but space is vast. Amelia checked the timeline. 2184 was when the hegemony had launched their final push toward the inner system, overrunning the outer colony worlds and driving the remnants of humanity back to Earth and Mars. Admiral, what is your estimated time of arrival? 28 hours, assuming we maintain current acceleration. Captain, what is the current status of Earth's defenses? Amelia closed her eyes. Earth is falling, Admiral. We estimate complete hegemony control within the next 12 to 18 hours. The silence stretched much longer this time. When Admiral Vasquez's voice returned, it was heavy with grief. Understood, Captain? We are too late. Perhaps not, Amelia said quickly. Admiral, are you familiar with the Quantum Resonance Engine project? Negative. Please explain. Over the next hour, Amelia explained the situation, the Curie installation, the plan to erase the hegemony fleet along with everything else in the inner system, and the moral dilemma of the expanded field radius. Dear God, Vasquez whispered when Amelia finished. You're talking about erasing Earth itself. Earth is already gone, Admiral. The question is whether we can stop the hegemony from pursuing the distant colonies and whether we can avoid killing additional innocent humans in the process. And this cascade failure risk? Real but unquantifiable. Dr. Kim estimates somewhere between 10 and 90% chance of creating an expanding quantum void that could affect a significant portion of the galaxy. Another long silence. Then, Captain, I need to consult with my fleet commanders. Can you delay activation for 24 hours? Unknown. It depends on how quickly Earth falls and whether the hegemony begins pursuing retreating ships toward the outer system. Understood. We'll accelerate to maximum safe speed and hope we can arrive in time to provide an alternative solution. As the communication ended, Chen turned to Amelia with a worried expression. Captain, I'm detecting new energy signatures from the direction of Earth. Massive ones. The main display shifted to show long-range sensor data from the inner system. What they saw made everyone in the control room fall silent. The space around Earth was filled with new ships, not the bioships they had seen before, but massive construction platforms. The hegemony wasn't just conquering Earth, they were harvesting it. Huge chunks of the planet's surface were being lifted into orbit, processed through alien machinery, and assembled into new vessels. They're not just absorbing the population, Kim said quietly. They're disassembling the entire planet. How long until Earth is completely gone? At this rate? 8 to 10 hours. Amelia made her decision. Begin the QRE initialization sequence. Both systems, simultaneous activation. Captain, Morrison interrupted. The colonial fleet won't arrive in time to save Earth, and might arrive to find the hegemony has gained access to a planet's worth of additional resources and technology. Amelia's voice was firm. We can't risk it. Kim nodded grimly and moved to the activation console. Beginning quantum field generator startup sequence. Both primary and secondary installations. The next hour was the longest of Amelia's life. Throughout the station, the massive quantum field generators came online one by one. The sound was unlike anything she had ever heard, a deep, thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate in her bones and make her teeth ache. The air itself began to shimmer as space-time started to bend around the growing field. Primary system at 15%, Kim reported. Secondary system at 12%. All readings nominal. How long until full activation? 6 hours, 17 minutes. And cascade failure? Still monitoring. So far, the quantum coherence between the two systems is stable, but... Kim's voice trailed off as she stared at her instruments. But what? The field interaction is creating resonance patterns we didn't predict. It's not dangerous yet, but it's affecting the field geometry. The final coverage area might be different than calculated. Larger or smaller? Unknown. The resonance is creating standing wave patterns that could either focus the field more tightly or expand it beyond our projections. Outside the control room windows, they could see the effects beginning. The twisted sphere of the QRE core was growing larger, and space around it was starting to distort visibly. Stars seemed to bend and shift as the quantum field warped light itself. Captain, Chin called out. I'm getting an emergency transmission from the colonial fleet. Put it through. Admiral Vasquez's voice came through the quantum communicator, much clearer now as the distance closed. Captain Voss, we've been monitoring your quantum emissions. What you're doing, the resonance patterns we're detecting suggest a field much larger than you described. How much larger? Our quantum physicists estimate the combined field could reach as far as 8 astronomical units, possibly more. That would encompass Jupiter, along with several of our advanced scout ships. 8 astronomical units. That was nearly twice the range they had originally calculated. Instead of 80,000 additional casualties, they might be looking at hundreds of thousands. Can you recall your scout ships? We're trying, but 3 of them went silent 6 hours ago. We think they might have been captured by hegemony forces. That changed everything. If the hegemony had captured colonial ships with their advanced technology, the threat was even greater than they had imagined. Admiral, what's the technological capability of your captured ships? Quantum drives, advanced AI systems, weapons technology at least 50 years ahead of anything the Earth Defense Force possessed. Captain, if the hegemony absorbs that technology, they'll be able to pursue the distant colonies no matter how far they run. Amelia finished. Admiral, I need to know, are you confident your fleet can defeat the hegemony forces in the Sol system? Unknown. We've never faced their bioships in direct combat. Our technology is more advanced, but they have numerical superiority and the advantage of position. And if we proceed with the QRE activation, you'll save approximately 1.8 million colonial humans scattered throughout 47 star systems, at the cost of roughly 300,000 additional casualties from the expanded field. The moral calculus was staggering, but the numbers were clear. 1.8 million saved versus 300,000 lost. And if they didn't activate the QRE, all 2.1 million might eventually fall to a technologically enhanced hegemony. Admiral, I need you to be completely honest with me. If we don't activate the QRE, what are the chances your fleet can defeat the hegemony and prevent them from pursuing the distant colonies? A long pause. Then, quietly, less than 30%, Captain. And if we do activate it? The distant colonies survive, guaranteed. But Earth dies, the Sol system dies, and 300,000 innocent people die with it. Amelia closed her eyes and thought about her daughter, somewhere beyond Centauri. She thought about Marcus, already dead defending Luna. She thought about the children born in the deep shelters who had never seen an unburned sky. Activation continues, she said firmly. For the next 3 hours, they watched the quantum field build toward critical strength. The distortion effects grew more pronounced, and several of the station's monitoring systems began reporting anomalous readings as spacetime itself bent around them. Primary system at 60%, Kim reported. Secondary system at 58%. Quantum coherence holding steady, but the resonance patterns are definitely affecting field geometry. Any sign of cascade failure? Not yet, but we're entering uncharted territory. The interaction between the two systems is creating effects we've never seen before. Captain, Chen interrupted. I'm detecting massive energy surges from the direction of Earth. Something big is happening. The long-range sensors showed chaos in the inner system. The hegemony construction platforms around Earth were suddenly accelerating their operations, stripping away huge sections of the planet's surface at an unprecedented rate. They know, Morrison said quietly. Somehow, they've detected the quantum field buildup. They're trying to harvest as much as possible before the field reaches critical strength. How long until full activation? 3 hours, 12 minutes. And how long until Earth is completely stripped? Kim ran quick calculations. At their current rate, approximately 4 hours. They're going to finish just in time to escape. Amelia realized. They'll take everything, all the resources, all the absorbed humans, all the technology, and retreat beyond the field radius just before activation. Not if we accelerate the process, Kim said grimly. Can we do that? We can overload the quantum field generators, force them to full output immediately. But the cascade failure risk would increase dramatically. We'd be looking at near certainty of creating an expanding quantum void. How far could it expand? Potentially thousands of light years. It could sterilize a significant portion of the galaxy. Amelia stared at the tactical display, watching the hegemony ships systematically dismantle Earth. In 3 hours, they would escape with everything they had taken. They would retreat, rebuild, and eventually pursue the distant colonies with enhanced technology and resources. Admiral Vasquez? She called into the communicator. Are you monitoring the situation at Earth? Affirmative, Captain. We see it. If the hegemony escapes with what they've harvested, what are the long-term prospects for the distant colonies? A pause. Then, grim, Captain? Very grim. And if we risk cascade failure to prevent their escape? You could save the colonies by erasing a large portion of the galaxy, including the colonies themselves. It was the ultimate impossible choice. Allow the hegemony to escape and doom humanity to eventual extinction, or risk erasing vast stretches of space to prevent that escape. There's a third option, Dr. Morrison said suddenly. We don't have to choose between normal activation and overload. We can use the resonance patterns. What do you mean? Morrison moved to the quantum field display and began highlighting specific areas. The resonance between the two systems is creating standing wave patterns. If we modulate the field generators in a specific sequence, we might be able to create a directed quantum pulse instead of an expanding sphere. A directed pulse? Focused directly at Earth and the hegemony fleet. It would leave the outer system largely unaffected while still ensuring complete destruction of the target area. Kim stared at the calculations Morrison was showing. That's theoretically possible, but incredibly dangerous. The field modulation would have to be precisely timed, and any miscalculation could destabilize both systems. What's the cascade failure risk? Hard to say. Maybe 50%, maybe more. But if it works, we could destroy the hegemony fleet while minimizing collateral damage. And if it doesn't work? Either we get normal field activation with all the associated casualties, or we get cascade failure and universal annihilation. Outside the control room, space itself was visibly warping as the quantum field approached critical strength. Stars seemed to dance and shift, and the asteroid's artificial gravity was beginning to fluctuate as the local space-time continuum bent under the enormous energies being generated. 2 hours until activation, Kim announced. Captain, Chen called out. Admiral Vasquez is requesting immediate communication. Put her through. Captain Vas, we've been analyzing the quantum emissions from your position. Our physicists believe they can predict the resonance patterns Dr. Morrison described. If you're willing to attempt the directed pulse configuration, we can provide targeting coordinates and field modulation frequencies. You can help us aim the quantum pulse? In theory, yes. Our quantum navigation systems are designed to work with similar resonance patterns. We can't guarantee success, but we can significantly improve the probability of accurate targeting. Amelia looked around the control room at her crew and the QRE station personnel. 12 people who had volunteered to spend 3 years in isolation, preparing for this moment. 5 crew members from the Resilience who had volunteered to die for the chance that humanity might survive. And now they were faced with a choice that could save millions or destroy vast reaches of space. What's the consensus? She asked quietly. Kim spoke first. The directed pulse is our best chance to minimize casualties while ensuring the hegemony's destruction. Chen nodded. The colonial fleet's assistance significantly improves our chances of success. Rodriguez, Park, and Tanaka all voiced their agreement. Finally, Dr. Morrison stepped forward. Captain, my calculations suggest an 70% chance of success, 20% chance of normal field activation, and 10% chance of cascade failure. Those are the best odds we're likely to get. And if we do nothing? If we just let the normal activation proceed? Guaranteed destruction of the hegemony, but also guaranteed death for 300,000 additional humans. Amelia made her decision. We attempt the directed pulse. Admiral Vasquez, transmit your targeting data and field modulation frequencies. We're going to take one last shot at saving everyone we can. The final hour was a masterwork of precision and desperation. Admiral Vasquez's fleet, still 24 hours away, used their advanced quantum sensors to map the resonance patterns building around Ceres. Dr. Kim and her team reconfigured the field generators based on the colonial fleet's recommendations, while Morrison worked frantically to calculate the precise timing needed for the directed pulse. Primary system at 90%, Kim reported. Secondary system at 87%. Field resonance pattern stable and aligned with colonial fleet targeting data. Through the quantum communicator, Admiral Vasquez provided constant updates. Hegemony fleet is beginning withdrawal from Earth orbit. Estimate 30 minutes before they reach minimum safe distance. How much of Earth is left? Amelia asked. Approximately 40% of the planet's mass remains. The continents are gone, Captain. They've taken everything, the oceans, the atmosphere, most of the land masses. What's left is barely recognizable as a planet. Amelia closed her eyes. Somewhere in the hegemony fleet was everything that had ever made Earth home, not just the physical matter, but the absorbed minds of every human they had captured. Billions of people, trapped in an alien collective consciousness, still aware but no longer free. Targeting solution confirmed. Vasquez continued. Quantum pulse should encompass the hegemony fleet while leaving Jupiter and the outer system unaffected. Colonial scouts at Jupiter report they're moving to minimum safe distance. How minimum is minimum? Morrison asked. If our calculations are correct, the pulse will attenuate to safe levels approximately 6.2 astronomical units from the point of origin. Jupiter is at 5.7 AU. It's going to be close. And if our calculations are wrong? Then Jupiter and everyone near it dies too. Kim's voice cut through the tension. 95% on both systems. Approaching critical threshold for pulse generation. Outside the control room, reality was becoming visibly unstable. The walls themselves seemed to ripple and shift as space-time bent under the enormous quantum forces being generated. Several crew members reported feeling dizzy and disoriented as their inner ears struggled to adapt to the fluctuating gravitational fields. "Captain," Chen announced, "I'm receiving a transmission from Earth. Audio only, very weak signal. Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was human but distorted, as if spoken through layers of interference and pain. "Sole defense command to any human vessels. Earth has fallen. The hegemony has completed primary harvesting operations and is beginning withdrawal. If anyone can hear this, know that we fought to the end. Remember us. Remember what we were." The transmission ended in static. For several moments, the control room was silent except for the deep thrumming of the quantum field generators. 98%, Kim said quietly. 2 minutes to critical threshold. Hegemony fleet is accelerating toward the outer system, Vasquez reported. They'll reach minimum safe distance in approximately 90 seconds. Can we accelerate our timeline? Negative. The field generators need to reach precise resonance frequencies or the directed pulse won't work. We have to wait for full synchronization. 99%. 1 minute to activation. Through the observation windows, they could see the QRE core beginning to collapse in on itself as spacetime reached its breaking point. The sphere of twisted reality was contracting, but somehow growing more intense, as if all the energy in the local area was being focused into an infinitely small point. Hegemony fleet at minimum safe distance, Vasquez announced. Captain, if you're going to do this, it has to be now. Critical threshold achieved, Kim reported. Both systems synchronized and ready for pulse generation. Amelia moved to the activation console. The interface was surprisingly simple, a single lever that would trigger the most powerful weapon ever created by human hands. Around the control room, her crew and the QRE station personnel watched silently. Any last words? She asked. Dr. Morrison stepped forward. For Marcus, for Sarah, for everyone who died defending what we were. For the children who will grow up free, added Chin. For Earth, Kim said simply. Amelia gripped the activation lever. For humanity. She pulled the lever. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Every instrument in the control room overloaded simultaneously as the quantum field collapsed into a directed pulse of pure annihilation. Through the observation windows, they could see space itself ripple outward from Ceres like a stone dropped into a calm pond. The pulse was invisible to normal light, but its effects were unmistakable. As it passed through the inner system, everything touched by the quantum wave simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality as if it had never been. Pulse propagation confirmed. Vasquez's voice came through the communicator, now crystal clear as the quantum interference dissipated. We're tracking the wave front. Impact with hegemony fleet in contact. They watched through the long-range sensors as the pulse reached the fleeing hegemony ships. One by one, the bioships vanished, not exploding or breaking apart, but simply ceasing to exist as their quantum patterns were unraveled and randomized. Target elimination confirmed, Vasquez announced. All hegemony vessels in the target zone have been neutralized. What about Earth? A pause. Then, quietly, Earth is gone, Captain. The pulse reached the planet's remains 15 seconds ago. Amelia closed her eyes. Somewhere in that expanding wave of quantum annihilation, the last traces of humanity's home had been erased forever. Every mountain, every ocean, every grain of sand that had ever felt human footsteps, gone. But also gone were the hegemony forces that had threatened to pursue the distant colonies. The alien collective that had absorbed billions of human minds was scattered across quantum foam, their biotechnological network permanently severed. Cascade failure analysis? Kim asked, monitoring her instruments. Negative. Quantum coherence is returning to normal levels. The pulse has attenuated safely, and local space-time is stabilizing. Jupiter? Pulse reached minimum safe distance with approximately 200,000 kilometers to spare. Jupiter and all colonial personnel in the area are unaffected. A cheer went up from the control room, tired, relieved, but genuine. They had done it. The impossible gambit had worked. Captain, Admiral Vasquez's voice came through the communicator. On behalf of the colonial fleet and the 1.8 million free humans scattered across 47 star systems, thank you. You've given us a future. What about the quantum resonance engine? Amelia asked Kim. Can it be safely shut down? Kim checked her instruments, then shook her head. The field generators are burned out. They gave everything they had to create that pulse. Ceres Station is going to be uninhabitable for the foreseeable future. The quantum distortion effects will persist for decades. But we're not trapped here. No. The distortion is stable now, just localized. We can evacuate safely. Over the next several hours, they shut down what systems they could and prepared to abandon the station. The quantum's edge would take them as far as the outer system, where Admiral Vasquez's fleet would pick them up. As they prepared to leave, Amelia took one last look around the control room that had been humanity's last hope. The quantum field generators stood silent now, their work complete. Through the observation windows, she could see the Curie core, no longer twisted and unstable, but somehow peaceful, like a monument to the price of freedom. Captain, Chen said as they headed toward the ship. What happens now? Now we rebuild, Amelia replied. The colonies have had a century to develop without constant warfare. Maybe they can show us how to be human again. And Earth? Amelia paused at the airlock of the quantum's edge. In the distance, where Earth had once orbited, there was only empty space now. Not even debris remained. The quantum pulse had been too thorough for that. Earth lives on in the colonies, she said finally. In the children who will grow up free, in the stories we tell, in the memory of what we once were and what we chose to become. As the quantum's edge departed Ceres Station, Amelia stood at the viewport watching the asteroid shrink in the distance. Behind them, the Sol system was forever changed, emptied of its home world but freed from the shadow of extinction. Ahead of them, Admiral Vasquez's fleet was decelerating to meet them, bringing news of the colonies and the possibility of a new beginning. The war was over. Humanity had survived, but at a cost that would echo through the generations. They had chosen to save tomorrow by sacrificing yesterday, to preserve the future by erasing the past. It was, Amelia reflected, perhaps the most human choice of all. 6 months later, Captain Amelia Voss stood on the observation deck of the CNS New Dawn, watching a small, blue-green world slowly rotate beneath them. The planet was called Haven, one of the first successful colonial worlds established by the refugee fleets that had fled Earth during the early years of the war. It's beautiful, said Chen, who now served as her communications officer aboard the colonial flagship. Look at those clouds. Natural weather patterns. Amelia smiled. Chen had finally seen what Earth might have looked like before the war, vast oceans unmarked by radiation, continents covered in green vegetation, an atmosphere clear enough to let sunlight through without the harsh glare of defensive shields. Captain, Admiral Vasquez approached from behind them. The Colonial Council has finished their deliberations. They're ready to present their findings. Over the past 6 months, the combined colonial fleet had been gathering refugees from across the Sol system and beyond, the scattered survivors who had escaped the war's final days. The number was smaller than they had hoped but larger than they had feared, approximately 2.3 million humans spread across 51 star systems. The Colonial Council was a new form of government, designed to unite the scattered human settlements under a common charter while preserving their individual autonomy. It was, many said, the first truly democratic institution humanity had created in over a century. What's their decision regarding Sol system restoration? Amelia asked. Vasquez's expression was thoughtful. They voted to establish a memorial fleet. Ships will be positioned throughout the system to serve as monuments and research stations. The goal is to study the quantum effects of the pulse and ensure that such a weapon is never needed again. And Ceres Station will become the central memorial. Dr. Kim has volunteered to lead a research team studying the quantum distortions. She believes the effects might provide insights into faster-than-light communication across galactic distances. Amelia nodded. It seemed fitting that the weapon designed to end the war might someday help humanity stay connected across the vast distances of space. There's something else, Vasquez continued. The Council has voted to establish the VAS Protocol. The what? A set of ethical guidelines for the development and deployment of quantum weapons. No single individual or government will ever again have the authority to deploy reality-altering technology without unanimous consent from all human settlements. They're naming it after me? After all of you. The crew of the Resilience, the volunteers who made the final mission possible, the personnel of Ceres Station. The protocol is designed to ensure that the kind of impossible choices you had to make will never be necessary again. Amelia was quiet for a long moment, watching Haven turn slowly beneath them. Somewhere on that world, children were growing up who had never seen war, never heard the sound of energy weapons, never breathed air that tasted of smoke and fear. Admiral, she said finally, I have a request. What kind of request? I want to retire from active service. Not from the colonial fleet entirely, but from command. I want to teach. Vasquez looked surprised. Teach what? History. Ethics. Decision-making under extreme circumstances. The colonies have had a century to develop advanced technology, but they'd been isolated from the experiences that shaped the war. I want to make sure future generations understand what we learned, what we lost, and what we chose to preserve. The Colonial Academy would be honored to have you. There's one more thing. I want to visit my daughter. Vasquez smiled. Captain Sarah Voss of the New Horizon Colony ship. She's currently based at the Centauri B research station. I'm sure she'd like to see her mother again. That evening, Amelia sat in her quarters aboard the New Dawn, composing a message to be transmitted via quantum entanglement to the Centauri system. It was the first communication she had been able to send her daughter in over 5 years. Sarah, she began, then paused. How do you explain to your child that you helped erase the world where she was born? How do you tell her that humanity survived because you chose to sacrifice everything that made it home? Sarah, the war is over. Earth is gone, but humanity lives. We made choices that no one should ever have to make, but we made them so that you and children like you could have a future. I hope someday you'll understand. I hope someday you'll forgive us. She paused again, looking out her viewport at the stars. Somewhere among those distant points of light were human worlds, human families, human children who would grow up free because of what had happened at Ceres Station. I love you, she continued. I've missed you every day for 15 years. If you're willing, I'd like to come visit. I'd like to meet your children if you have them. I'd like to tell them stories about Earth, not about the war, but about what it was like before. About blue skies and natural rain and the feeling of standing on solid ground without worrying about enemy ships overhead. She finished the message and sent it off into the quantum foam, carrying her words instantly across the vast distance to her daughter. Then she sat back and watched the stars, thinking about impossible choices and necessary sacrifices and the strange mathematics of survival. In the distance, Haven continued its slow rotation, a world where children could look up at the night sky and see wonder instead of threat. It wasn't Earth, but it was home to someone. And perhaps, Amelia thought, that was enough. The war was over. Humanity had survived. And in the end, perhaps that was the most anyone could ask for, not to preserve what was, but to ensure that something better could be. Outside her viewport, the stars shone with ancient light, carrying the dreams of a species that had chosen to endure rather than surrender, to hope rather than despair. It was a small victory in the vast darkness of space, but it was theirs. And it was enough.